Is there anything more exhilarating than wingsuit flying, or perhaps more perilous? This extreme sport pushes boundaries, inviting daring adventurers to face incredible risks. Join us as we delve into the most harrowing incidents experienced by wingsuiters. Be warned, these tales are not for the faint-hearted, filled with graphic and unsettling details that reveal the sport's darker side. Mark Sutton was the kind of guy who didn't just chase his dreams, he flew after them. Born into a family of serious prestige, his dad was Air Marshal Sir John Matthias Dobson Sutton, a Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath and a former Lieutenant Governor of the island of Jersey. With a pedigree like that, Mark was expected to follow the straight and narrow path of military honor. And for a while, he did. In 1991, he joined the Army and served with distinction for 4 years, ticking all the right boxes. But here's the thing, the predictable life of military service didn't quite cut it for Mark. After leaving the Army in 1995, he took a sharp turn into London's high-stakes financial sector. Sounds glamorous, right? Well, not so much for a guy with adventure in his blood. Suits and boardrooms couldn't compare to the thrill he was really craving. So while he balanced the demands of finance, he found his true passion elsewhere, in the clouds. Enter wingsuit flying, the ultimate extreme sport. Imagine diving off cliffs and gliding through the air at breakneck speeds, with nothing but a specially designed suit keeping you from free falling. For Mark, this wasn't just a hobby, it was pure exhilaration, and he wasn't just good at it, he was exceptional. In no time, his skills earned him international fame, and in 2012, he got his biggest spotlight moment, performing a skydiving stunt as James Bond during the London Olympics. Millions watched in awe as he soared through the sky, proving that sometimes life really is as cool as the movies. But Mark wasn't the type to rest on his laurels. The man was always chasing the next big adrenaline rush. In 2013, he joined the Alps 74 event in Chamonix, France, a mecca for wingsuit flyers. The rugged peaks and deep valleys of the French Alps created the perfect playground for those daring enough to push the limits of human flight. Every jump was a chance to etch their names into the sport's history, and Mark was more than ready to leave his mark. On August 14th, the second day of the event, Mark geared up for what was supposed to be a simple warm-up flight. Nothing too crazy, just a 1-minute dive from a helicopter hovering at 10,800 feet. He and fellow wingsuiter Tony Urigallo took their positions, the doors slid open, and that familiar rush of wind hit them. The kind of wind that whispers, "Get ready, this is gonna be epic." With a nod to Tony, Mark leapt into the crisp mountain air, and for those first few seconds, everything was perfect. He soared, the world below blending into a blur of green and gray. At speeds reaching 249 kilometers per hour, the mountains and valleys raced past him. Pure freedom. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. A slight miscalculation, a small veer off course, and suddenly, Mark found himself on a collision path with a mountain ridge. At those speeds, there was no time for correction. One moment he was flying, the next the flight turned into tragedy. The impact was devastating. A rescue helicopter arrived swiftly, but it was too late. The crash had been so severe that DNA testing was required to confirm his identity. And just like that, the wingsuit community lost one of its brightest stars. News of Mark Sutton's death sent shockwaves through the extreme sports world. The remaining participants at the Alps 74 event were heartbroken, but they knew the best way to honor him was to keep flying. They dedicated their jumps to his memory, soaring through the skies just as Mark would have wanted. Mark Sutton wasn't just a daredevil, he was a pioneer. He showed the world the breathtaking potential of human flight, and he did it with grace, professionalism, and an unyielding hunger for adventure. His legacy lives on in the sport he loved, in the memories of those who saw his incredible feats, and in the hearts of those who dream of reaching the same dizzying heights. March 29th, 2014 began like any other adventure for Dan Vicari, Ludovic Worth, and Brian Drake, three of the world's most skilled and daring wingsuit flyers. These guys weren't just thrill seekers, they were masters of a sport that combines the heart-pounding rush of freefall with the beauty of controlled flight. It takes years of dedication, fearlessness, and skill to reach their level, and they'd earned their place among the best. That morning, they gathered in the Luchental Valley in Switzerland, a picture-perfect destination for extreme sports enthusiasts. With its towering ridges and steep descents, the valley was a natural magnet for wingsuit flyers chasing the ultimate adrenaline high. This was supposed to be another exhilarating day, a chance to sharpen their skills and revel in the stunning backdrop of the Swiss Alps. As their helicopter climbed higher into the clear blue sky, its rotor slicing through the crisp morning air, the three men looked out at the vast stretch of snow-capped peaks glistening in the sunlight. But these mountains weren't obstacles. They were a playground. For Vicari, Worth, and Drake, the sky was their home, and the mountains were where they pushed the limits of human flight. At the jump point, they carried out their final checks. Their wingsuits, sleek, custom designed, and perfectly tuned, were ready. They'd meticulously planned their flight path, aiming for a steep route over a ridge that would give them the speed and altitude needed for a flawless glide. It was a challenging route, but one they had flown before. They knew the risks, but they also knew the reward. That feeling of absolute freedom when everything went right. The moment arrived. The helicopter doors swung open, and one by one, they leapt into the void. The rush of air hit them instantly, but it was a familiar embrace. In seconds, their wingsuits transformed their freefall into a graceful, controlled glide. Below them, the valley stretched out like a living map, the rugged terrain and winding slopes unfolding in breathtaking detail. For a while, everything was perfect. They gained speed and altitude, moving with the ease and precision that only comes from years of practice. But then, something went wrong. Instead of staying on their planned route, they veered off course. The steep descent they'd aimed for was now behind them, and ahead lay flat terrain, a wingsuit flyer's worst-case scenario. Without updrafts or natural features to help them stay airborne, their margin for error shrank dangerously. In wingsuit flying, altitude is everything. Lose too much of it and recovery becomes nearly impossible. Realizing their mistake, the trio tried to adjust, turning left toward a more favorable slope that could provide the lift they desperately needed. But the correction came too late. The ridge loomed ahead, its jagged rocks and sheer cliffs a brutal reminder of the mountain's unforgiving nature. Vicari and Worth, unable to gain the altitude needed to clear the ridge, crashed into the ground with devastating force. The impact was fatal. In an instant, two of the sport's brightest stars were gone, their incredible lives cut short on the cold, unforgiving earth. Drake, flying close behind, managed to avoid an immediate collision, but was forced into an emergency landing. Though he survived the crash, his injuries were severe. Despite the best efforts of rescuers and medical teams, he passed away 4 days later. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the wingsuit flying community and beyond. These weren't just any athletes, they were legends, admired and respected worldwide. Their deaths served as a stark reminder of the sport's inherent dangers, where the ultimate thrill often comes at the ultimate cost. In the days that followed, an investigation was launched to determine the exact cause of the accident. While some details remained unclear, it became evident that a miscalculated flight path and the unexpected terrain played a significant role. The deviation from their planned route left them with too little altitude and even fewer options for recovery. The incident also sparked a broader conversation about safety in extreme sports. Wingsuit flying had always been risky, but the loss of such experienced flyers raised serious questions about how those risks could be better managed. As tributes poured in from friends, family, and fellow athletes, one thing became clear. Vicari, Worth, and Drake were more than daredevils. They were pioneers, fearless adventurers who pushed the boundaries of human flight. They lived for the sky, and though their journey ended too soon, their legacy continues to inspire those brave enough to chase the wind. Dwayne Weston was the ultimate double act, a guy with one foot in logic and the other in pure adrenaline. By day, he was a buttoned-up computer analyst, mastering the precise, predictable world of software development. But by passion, he was a fearless daredevil who laughed in the face of gravity. Born in Sydney, Australia, Weston balanced discipline and danger like a pro, tackling the binary world with the same precision he brought to soaring through the air like a gymnast. But his true love, base jumping, the wild child sport that only the boldest dared to take on. For those not in the know, base stands for building, antenna, span, and earth. Basically jumping off really high things and hoping your parachute opens in time. In the early 2000s, this sport was the ultimate rebellion against gravity, and Weston was its rock star. He didn't just jump, he flew. He flipped twisted and introduced acrobatic moves that took the sport to a whole new level. In 2002, he nailed his legacy by winning the world title with an epic leap from Malaysia's Petronas Twin Towers. Every jump was a calculated dance with death, a perfect balance of courage and control. But even Weston knew that balance was razor thin. That thin line between life and death finally caught up with him on October 5th, 2003, in what would become his final and most infamous act. The scene was set at the inaugural Go Fast Games at the Royal Gorge Bridge in Colorado. This wasn't just any bridge. It hung a terrifying 1,053 feet above the Arkansas River, making it a prime spot for daredevils. And Weston, he was ready to push the limits like never before. This time he wore a wingsuit, a high-flying outfit that basically turns you into a human flying squirrel, letting you glide through the air with incredible speed and control. The plan was ambitious. Weston would soar over the bridge while his buddy Jeb Corliss flew underneath it. Right before the jump, Weston turned to Corliss and said words that would haunt the community forever. Just remember, whatever happens, happens. And then they leaped. At first, everything went as planned. Weston's wingsuit caught the wind and he soared like a superhero. But then, disaster. He miscalculated the wind speed and his distance from the bridge. Hurtling at around 120 miles per hour, Weston slammed into a railing. The impact was brutal, severing one of his legs. Though his parachute deployed, it was far too late. He crashed onto a rock face 300 feet from the bottom of the gorge, where he tragically bled to death. Spectators, excited for a thrill, were instead faced with horror. Some had their cameras rolling, capturing the sickening sound of the impact and the gasps of the crowd. The footage later served as a grim reminder of the sport's dangers. Damage to the bridge took weeks to fix, but the emotional scars lasted much longer. Weston's death sent shockwaves through the base jumping community, yet for those who knew him, his life and death symbolized the delicate balance between passion and peril. He lived on the edge, and though the fall was tragic, his fearless spirit remains unforgettable. The morning air at Tianmen Mountain National Forest Park in Hunan Province, China, buzzed with excitement. Mist wrapped around the towering peaks, blurring the line between earth and sky, setting a mystical stage for the World Wingsuit Championships. Among the fearless competitors was Victor Kovats, a legend in wingsuit flying. A three-time Hungarian national champion with over 700 jumps to his name, Kovats was admired as a pioneer, a master of blending grace and precision in the art of human flight. August 7th, 2016 started like any other competition day. Tianmen Mountain, with its dramatic cliffs and deep gorges, was a breathtaking yet dangerous playground, the perfect venue for those daring enough to defy gravity. Kovats had come to China with one goal: to dominate the skies with the agility and control of an eagle. He had prepared meticulously, every jump and maneuver rehearsed down to the last detail. As the mist slowly lifted, revealing the mountain's rugged beauty, the towering cliffs stood tall and challenging, daring competitors to take the leap. Kovats suited up and made his way to the designated jump point, a dizzying 700-meter high cliff. The clouds still clung to the ground below, making it impossible to see what lay beneath. But for Kovats, this was just another day at the office. Height, speed, and adrenaline were his natural habitat. The trial flight was meant to be a simple test run, a way to familiarize himself with the terrain before the competition began. As he stood at the edge of the cliff, the world stretched out beneath him, every muscle tensed in anticipation. Then, without hesitation, he jumped, and for a few glorious moments, he was one with the sky. The rush of air, the blur of the earth below, and the sheer exhilaration of flight consumed him. He moved with the fluidity of a bird, defying gravity and embracing freedom. As Kovats neared the crucial moment to deploy his parachute, something went horribly wrong. The chute failed to open. The exact cause of the malfunction remains a mystery, but the reality was undeniable. He was plummeting toward the earth at terminal velocity, with no way to slow his fall. Spectators watched in horror as the scene unfolded. What had started as a beautiful display of human defiance against nature's limits turned into a tragic reminder of those very limits. Kovats fought to control his descent, his body twisting in a desperate attempt to correct his trajectory. But without his parachute, parachute, there was nothing more he could do. The ground rushed toward him with terrifying speed, and the cliffs closed in around him. The impact was catastrophic. The sound of the collision echoed through the park, a grim announcement of the tragedy. Rescuers quickly mobilized, but the steep, unforgiving terrain made recovery incredibly difficult. Over 200 firefighters and police officers worked tirelessly, knowing their mission was now one of recovery, not rescue. When they finally found Kovats, the devastation was heartbreaking. His wingsuit lay torn and bloodied, and the force of the impact had been shattering. The wingsuit flying community was shaken to its core. The loss of Kovats wasn't just the death of a competitor, it was the loss of a brother, a pioneer, and an inspiration. The Red Bull World Wingsuit League honored his memory with moments of silence, giving everyone time to reflect on the fragility of life and the sacrifices made in the pursuit of passion. On September 29, 2016, Eric Dos Santos, a veteran wingsuit pilot with nerves of steel, geared up for what was supposed to be just another day at the office. Except his office happened to be the sky over the stunning French Alps. In the opening moments of his adventure, everything looked totally chill. Eric, with his helmet cam ready, flashed a casual au revoir before takeoff, completely unaware that this flight was about to turn into an absolute nightmare. As he soared over the snow-capped peaks and craggy cliffs, the scenery was straight up breathtaking. Picture lush green forests, dramatic drops, and Eric's shadow racing below him like a tiny, fearless ghost. It was the perfect blend of thrill and serenity, man and nature vibing in perfect harmony. But just 51 seconds into this epic journey, things took a terrifying turn. Out of nowhere, Eric started losing altitude, and fast. In the blink of an eye, what should have been an exhilarating ride almost turned into his last. His camera captured every heart-stopping second as he skimmed treetops at a jaw-dropping 90 miles per hour. And then, bam. Disaster struck. He clipped a tree at full speed and the screen went black. Just like that, the flight was over. Miraculously, Eric survived, but not without some serious damage. His left side took the brunt of the impact, leaving him with fractures in his shoulder blade, collarbone, and 3 ribs. As if that wasn't enough, he also suffered a bruised neck, head injuries, a cut liver, and a collection of nasty gashes on his head. His recovery even required time in a hyperbaric chamber to treat his head trauma. Honestly, the fact that he lived through a high-speed wingsuit crash without deploying his parachute is nothing short of insane. In fact, Eric is only the second person ever to survive a crash like this. Now, if you're wondering what kind of daredevil sport this is, let's break it down. Wingsuit flying is the closest humans get to being actual birds, or more accurately, bats. The special suit has nylon membranes stretching between the arms, legs, and body, transforming the wearer into a human glider. By using tiny, precise shifts in their arms and legs, pilots can steer themselves through the air with grace and speed. This sport is especially beloved by base jumpers, who skip the whole airplane thing and launch themselves off cliffs, tall platforms, or other ridiculously high spots. Once airborne, it's all about control. And trust me, it's not as easy as it looks. Even seasoned pros struggle with the delicate art of steering. One wrong move or miscalculation can lead to disaster, as Eric's story clearly shows. While Eric's survival is nothing short of miraculous, not every wingsuit flight ends so fortunately. His brush with death serves as a reminder of the extreme risks involved in chasing the dream of human flight.